Hey everybody, how's it going? Patrick here on the Scent Booth. We've got Hawas London today. So first thanks has to go to my girlfriend for getting this for Valentine's Day. I was not expecting this to be the gift that I got, honestly. She's never bought me a fragrance just because she knows I have, a good amount, and maybe feels a little pressured in terms of she may pick something that she's not sure how much I like. And, she essentially talked to some of our mutual friends and they kind of helped her pick this for me. And I was really surprised, I don't think I would have bought this so early on in its life cycle of the fragrance by myself. Yeah, I'm thankful to have it and very surprised this is here for us to take a look at. I'm sure you've seen a ton of variation in terms of the opinions that people have on this fragrance. It is interesting as a pick, Brompton Immortal from Ex Nihilo. Really intrigued what the business decision was to pick that fragrance, just because, Ex Nihilo's niche and that fragrance itself is also exclusive geographically, like where you can get it. So I wonder what market research they did to end up on this fragrance. But we'll get into the scent profile, tell you guys what I think, and go into why it's so divisive at the moment in terms of ratings, opinions. There's a mix of stuff I think that has settled it in its spot at the moment. Pretty early on, right when it comes out is, at that $60 price point or so. And, not saying it's not justifiable, but I think having seen some other news, the potential divisiveness of this fragrance, I would have at the very least, made sure that I sampled it. And, I always advocate for that, but especially a brand new Hawas release, super important to do so. That's $60. And, you can't always return fragrances too. So I am very thankful for my girlfriend. This is a lovely gift. I'll get this on skin and tester, and while it dries down, we'll go ahead and get into some of the marketing and strategy and potential confusion that this fragrance has created within the community. Really more rose forward than I had anticipated, but I really enjoy rose. It seems like a lot of the fragrances I've been wearing lately are pretty heavily rose backed in terms of the DNA, but I do like the opening. The pepper comes through and gives you this nuance of spice. I think the pepper is done really well too, because it'll transition you into the middle and bottom notes, which also are slight bit more, resinous and still have their own spice to them, like frankincense, for example. I really like the theme of the bottle, though I do think that is one of the situations where people feel a bit confused about the fragrance itself. I understand, it's kind of giving off some of the colors you'd see on the British flag, or the UK flag rather, but it does have more of a pink gradient, not red. So it is interesting, that's on the box and the bottle. And I think because of the pink gradient, it evokes a different energy in terms of the packaging to what the fragrance is going to be. I think a lot of people have said that the packaging makes them feel like it's going to be something fresh, peachy, maybe aquatic. So really just from the standpoint of, people who are newer into fragrance are not really looking at note breakdowns and doing tons of research before buying, this could give the illusion of again, another true flanker to Hawas, the original. So just kind of how Ice did it. I could see how that kind of goes in the realm of that. I guess the other side could be, the pink gradient is transitioning. The pink gradient could kind of represent rose that's heavily used in the fragrance. But yeah, I think that's where there's some confusion. People aren't realizing that the Brompton Immortal is gonna be this almost. So that's just something to keep in mind in terms of strategy and bottle design. Again, that shouldn't be the entirety of what sways you to buy a fragrance, of course. But like I said, people who are more casual fans of fragrance, that's not gonna be their first reaction to do all this research and get into these fragrances, with tons of preparation essentially. But for me, it's like any other Hawas bottle. I think it's beautiful, and to an extent fits the theme. To an extent, I can understand the confusion as well. But yeah, I think we've waited long enough for the dry down. But yeah, this is interesting coming from Ex Nihilo. I think the fragrance itself is really more of a Middle Eastern fragrance, and I think that's where a lot of confusion comes about. Because again, not many people are going to have smelled the original. I've seen a handful of people who have smelled the original. In conclusion, they pretty much say it's very close, and for the price point, the quality really is there. Another aspect I've seen is longevity is an issue for a lot of users. The formulation here would lead to a lot of nose blindness. Some of the musks I smell kind of remind me of another 13 by Le Labo, or even going into the realm of musk, saffron, ethyl vanillin, ethyl maltol, kind of like Baccarat as well, which, you know, those kind of fragrances with those heavy, large molecules definitely can promote nose blindness, nose fatigue. So I don't think there's any issue with longevity here. You know, I've got these on initial spray, but I've worn this about 2 full days. You know, I'm gonna give you a mix of first impressions and long term. I could definitely go into a more in-depth review after, you know, maybe a week or so, but I do want to give you a general idea of all of the aspects of this fragrance. But yeah, it kind of seems like with the woodiness, the musk used, that's kind of where the modern perfumery part is in terms of the formulation. But again, the fragrance itself feels Middle Eastern to me. You know, spicy opening with saffron, pink pepper, very rose dominant, and then ambers as well. And then yeah, you get that muskiness after. Yeah, I think there's just a culmination of things that would confuse people. They like this one, but I still would go with precaution and sample this first. I know some other people say there's kind of a soapiness with old lady fragrance, you know, like a more vintage approach to fragrance making. Maybe I could see that too. You know, some resins can come off soapy, but I think it's just going to be down to your own nose and, you know, how you detect this fragrance. For me, the resins are just adding additional spiciness to that opening. Again, for me, that means, you know, the transition is smooth. This is a very smooth fragrance. The rose is done well. You could maybe say a little feminine leaning, but I think it's unisex because of the way this spice is incorporated. I think the longer you've got it on you, the fragrance is at its best. The rose begins to mix with the amber accord, slight vanilla, and I like how the musk, especially for my nose, really wafts in and out. And again, that's what makes me think of something like a Baccarat, is, you know, that fragrance wafts in and out a lot just because of how it was built. The other day, funnily enough, I was at the mall with my friends and we had smelt Radical Rose. Not exactly the same, not gonna say they're the same fragrance, but definitely in the same DNA, kind of like a spiced rose. I would say that one was a little more spicy. The way the rose is used is kind of similar. So if you have smelled that is most likely more common of a fragrance than Brompton Immortal. So you could maybe, you know, use that as a slight reference as well. Yeah, I think the best bet for this fragrance is to go ahead and get a, you know, 2 ml sample. The longevity I think is crazy, 7-8 hours easily. Clothes especially, it's gonna be stuck there for a while, honestly. Try fewer sprays of this fragrance. I think I've been doing 3 or 4. That could help you a little bit with potential nose fatigue. The location of your spray, you know, maybe not directly on your neck, maybe, you know, like on the sides of your chest, or on your clothes, or, you know, typical other pulse points, but not too close to your nose. That could help with the blindness as well. So just try these different things, you know, experiment with that 2 ml if you are pretty intrigued by this fragrance, and, you know, go from there. I think you'll be better off, but I won't guarantee that you'll like it for sure. I still see this being, you know, something you're gonna need to spend time with before you make an ultimate decision. Definitely have noticed that within the Hawas line, they are really pushing into more niche fragrances. That's kind of the other talking point I wanted to get into. The Hawas line is really big in terms of lineup now, so I think the identity can confuse people a lot. The initial start is kind of more like, you know, Hawas Ice, the OG, even some of the ones after that like Malibu. Those are all more, you know, in vein with mass appealing fragrances. And then as time has gone on, they've built up, you know, a larger side of niche fragrances within the line. And, you know, I think it's kind of getting confusing for some people in terms of what they are seeking when it comes to Hawas. And the past expectation they may have once had is not the same as the current expectation. Or even, you know, if you are watching influencers who really hype up Hawas as a lineup, you might go into it assuming, oh yeah, I think any of these that I purchase are going to be fairly safe, mass appealing type of DNAs. I mean, you know, I think it's interesting that they are offering both within the same line. I think there just needs to be, you know, a more clear-cut way to promote that, if you will, just so there's less confusion. Because again, as I've iterated, not everyone is going to do that same amount of research going into a fragrance purchase, which is very understandable. You know, and I love the fragrance, but my job really is to ensure that you enjoy your purchases that you make, and I just want to help you be a decision in that, in terms of being more on the precautionary side. So that's definitely the takeaway from this video in terms of Hawas London. Very nice floral ambery niche approach to fragrance, but just make sure that you like it before going full bottle worthy on this one. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you in another. Peace out.